Insurance people of Reddit, what is the most outrageous claim that you have ever come across? Story 1 had a claims assessor telling me about the time someone claimed a car ran into their garden wall and knocked it down. Apparently, as he showed up to confirm the damage, the guy was just starting to knock the wall down with a sledgehammer. Story 2 former auto claims adjuster here had a guy get into a head-on collision with a semi-truck because it veered into his lane, walks away from the crash without injury. Tells me on the phone that he is so lucky to be alive and has a guardian angel watching over him. Get another claim a week later where another semi-truck veers into his lane and kills him. Final destination. I had a guy once who would submit a claim every few months because he kept crashing his Corvette at 2 a.m. Never any cops called, but I'm 100% sure it's due to drinking. After the 5th time, I stopped hearing from him. Turns out his roommate beat him to death with a hammer. I've spotted shady body shops rated for fraud in the past who have told me they're going to sue me for defamation after I've asked the customer to move shops. Kid once called in a claim lying about what happened and who was driving his car. We caught him because he made a Facebook post on that day saying what actually happened. Ended up denying the claim because the actual driver had a suspended license. Kids, keep your private because everyone is watching. One time actually informed an insured that his car had been in an accident he didn't know because his mechanic took a ride out in the insured's nice car without the owner's permission. Had a guy at a construction site back a Bobcat into his own personal car. Technically, insurance follows the owner, not the driver. So really the owner of the company's insurance is liable. The owner was pissed that his insurance has to pay the worker even though the worker backed into his own car. And that would be an easy way to get insurance money. Rules are rules though. Edit, I had a guy put in a DOI complaint against me. Those get investigated very thoroughly. And I've seen people fired for honest mistakes because he caused $400 to the rear bumper of a car that was illegally blocking his driveway. And he was saying you shouldn't have been at fault. If a car is illegally parked, call a tow truck, don't hit it with your own. A $400 claim wasn't even a high enough payout to surcharge his premium. So he wouldn't have even seen it on his next renewal. So stupid. Edit 2 had a claimant with a quarter panel dent on his 2003 Mitsubishi Eclipse. The catch, he had a 3,000 Ironman paint job on it. The car is only worth $2,500, meaning that small quarter panel totaled his car out because the entire car would need to be repainted and the job would exceed the value of the vehicle. He was unhappy. Word of advice, don't get a custom paint job on your car if your car isn't worth the paint that's being put on it. Story 3, a lady made a claim that stated a group of men dressed in all black who moved like ghosts snuck under her house and stole her copper pipes and expertly installed PVC to replace it. That one was reason 8,542 why I got out of that business. Story 4, there was the story about a guy who bought a box of really expensive cigars. He insured them against pretty much every possible accident, theft, fire, natural disaster, etc. Later, having smoked all the cigars, he filed an insurance claim, claiming that the cigars were destroyed in a series of small fires. The insurance company lost the court case and was forced to pay the man something like $20,000. They then sued the man for arson. Story 5, I worked in a car insurance call center and had to deal with someone who was trying to beat the system and got caught. She had crashed her insured vehicle and wanted to make a claim. Standard stuff, except the car and registration number we had on our system was totally different to the actual car she was actually driving and had crashed. She was getting really aggressive towards me on the phone saying, I told you the exact car I drive, and the registration, you idiot, why would I say it isn't when it is actually in blah blah. I don't remember the actual car model she had insured under, but it was certainly a vehicle that warrants a significantly lower premium. So we looked into it, and eventually my team leader actually dug out, from the archives, the telephone recording from when she took out insurance with us. In it, the operator repeats slowly the car model and registration and says, is that correct? She replied, yes. Busted. She was so but hurt that we were lying, we actually sent her a CD with the recording on. TLDR, woman tried to get away with insurance fraud, crashed car, and got busted. Story 6, I started off in claims for a major home insurance brand in NZ. Client calls in and says our bed broke. Without approximate cause, I can't lodge a claim, and if it's wear and tear, there is no claim since that isn't covered. Conversation goes around in circles for a while longer, and eventually they ask to go to his supervisor. Fortunately, the sup is my friend sitting behind me. So I get to hear his end of call. They were having group on the bed, 5 people. A 6th person decided to join the festivities, and that is when the bed broke, acceptable and paid claim. Story 7, I worked for workman's compensation insurance. A few claims stand out. My favorite one was the guy who thought he was being followed by the FBI. He wasn't. And so, when he turned left and the car behind him also turned left, he without hesitation jumped into the passenger seat, then jumped out of the passenger seat's door and rolled into a ravine while the truck, his work truck, smashed into 2 other cars parked at a gas station. The person behind him was just like what the actual just happened. I could not stop laughing while getting his account of what happened. Imagine watching the driver in front of you turn around, see you look terrified, then next thing you know, they have jumped out of the vehicle. Honorable mention was the campground that had a huge plastic, hollow dinosaur statue. The owner had hired a guy to repair paint the dinosaur, and while he was halfway in the mouth, he lost his balance and fell in, breaking his leg. Injury-wise, it was minor, but the lady who owned the campground just made the claim unforgettable. She, for no reason at all, I got the info I needed in the first call and required no other contact with her, insisted on emailing me this funny little letters about the incident. An example of an email: good afternoon. Sim12345, just thought you'd like to know Doug the dinosaur is doing great. He is doing much better with his diet. Has only gobbled up 3 more people since we last talked. We believe in time we may be able to rid him of his addiction to human flesh and truly domesticate him as part of the family. Cheers. So yeah, that was weird. Story 8. I used to work for a firewater damage restoration company. We show up to a water damage job. Turns out, this guy is trying to turn his 1-story house into 2-story house and has hired some Amish guys to do the job. At this point, pretty much the entire house is roofless, as in, you look up anywhere from inside the house and see sky. When the Amish dudes finished working the day before, they didn't cover up the house. It rained that night, soaked the entire inside of the house. Insurance covered it. So we spend the day cutting and pulling out soaking wet carpet while the Amish continued working above. They don't cover the house again, and it rains again. Insurance covered that too. We talked to the adjuster, and she just had this defeated look on her face. The claim was in the 100,000s, and she said these people were basically getting a new house. Haven't seen that much stupidity rewarded that well in a long time. The upside, though, after the second night, they started covering up the house. Story 9. I work at a call center that contracts roadside assistance for most major insurance companies. Any adjuster or CA agent would know who we are, but we seem to act as a switchboard for some of the insanely stupid. Some gems locked inside my car physical locks. Not electronic. Can you dispatch someone to put the stickers on my license plate? I don't understand why I have to file a claim. I only flipped my car 8 times, hit 2 people for deer and a largish tree. Why can't I just be towed? The car is fine. Tell me now, damn it. My car is flooding. Most of these stories are word of mouth from colleagues. This one happened to me last week when Texas was an underwater level, and my all-time favorite: what do you mean I'm not covered? I pay a large number a month for my insurance. Just tell me, damn it. That's nice, but most of our contracts charge like less than $5 a month per car for roadside assistance. Story 10. So if you were from the UK, you have probably heard of the crash, which happened at a pub in Glasgow a couple of years back. If not, it was called the Clutha. Have a look into it. It was pretty horrific. Quick rundown: a police helicopter's engine failed and crashed into a very busy pub. Horrible accident, lots dead, lots injured. Anyway, fast forward a few months after all the legitimate claimants were well in motion and being dealt with, the law firm I was working in at the time got what I would call a chancer through claiming for psychological damages, which is all good, and well, if you were in the vicinity or lost a loved one. However, this chap was across an entire river from where you can barely see the pub and just saw the explosion too far to probably even hear any screams. After a lot of conversation about it, one of the senior partners of the firm took the case without giving any names, personal info, etc. That particular client got a recent payout of somewhere in the region of $15,000. That, guys, is why your insurance premiums are so high. Absolute waste of space. Chancing his arm has walked away with a year's wage for some people for absolutely all. Story 11. Amending original post with more stories. Actual license claims adjuster here. I handle auto liability investigation and injury settlement. I don't think my story will fit outrageous by what you're expecting, but this one was surprising as I did my investigation. Had a claim come in where the policyholder says some guy backed into them in the post office, then drove off. So the cops find the guy the next day, and his policy lapsed for the date of loss, and there's no coverage. Our policyholder and one of her passengers, her brother, are claiming injury, and they want to use their uninsured motorist coverage to pay for her damages injuries, which means I still do an investigation and act as the other carrier would have if the guy had coverage. So we call the dude up, and his story is that our crazy policyholder chased him down a dirt road for several miles. He pulled into a post office in a rural area dirt parking lot, etc., to try and pull around the building and lose her. The rear of the building was blocked, so she pulled him behind him, blocking him in. He threw the car in reverse and rammed our policyholder's vehicle out of the way and drove off. Fearing for his life, I interviewed the cop who attended the accident scene, and it turns out our policyholder gave this kid some cash at a gas station down the road, then realized she gave him a 20 instead of a 10 and asked for it back, and he took off. She chased him down to get her money back. The question left unanswered was if this kid actually feared for his life. Apparently, he told the cop that policyholder's brother got out of the car and threatened the kid, at which point he threw the car in reverse and left. The whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth because I took a statement with our policy holder and there were so many inconsistencies I was sure it was a drug deal gone bad. Rather than dude asked for money. Story 2. Hey Ray is a good illustration of the roller coaster my job can be. I get a description that says something like V1 rammed V2 from the rear, then rammed from the side, then crashed. It seems pretty apparent that we'll pay on this loss, but I'm thinking the claimant has way exaggerated what happened to make it seem like our driver was malicious. I call our driver and ask him for a recorded statement about that night, and he goes off for 20 minutes all over the place. I slowly piece it together with him that he was at a club with friends and his baby mama saw him hitting on some other girls. They weren't together, but she got jealous, and when they all leave for the night around 2 a.m., she and 3 friends' relatives follow him. They get out of their car at the first light they all stop at and try to fight him. He runs a light to get away. He drops his buddies off and drives to his very rural home, where he lives alone, and goes inside to charge his phone and realizes his house has been ransacked. He goes outside to get his cigarettes from the car, to smoke while he waits for his phone to charge enough to call the cops, and is jumped by 2 guys who were with his baby mama at the club while she and her sister watch. They pull a knife and stab him in the arm, but he fights the 2 dudes off enough to get to his car and drive off. At this point, I'm wondering where the car accident happens. But keep in mind, he's telling it all way out of order, and I had to piece this back together. He drives to a neighbor's house, calls 911, then drives back home, where the baby mama crew is waiting in front of his house. He pulls in the driveway, and finally, it is at that point that he taps their car as he pulls in his driveway and grinds against the side as he tries to correct before getting into his driveway. The cops show up, he goes to the hospital, but he doesn't know about anybody else, so I'm thinking, man, we owe this claim, but there's no way there are 4 injuries from this. I call the driver of the other vehicle and hay-race her version, keeping in mind that I never tell these people what I already know. She is driving down the road at around 4 a.m. with her sister in the front seat. Her 2 male cousins in the back, and a commercial van think E350 hits them from behind, then hits them from behind again, then overtakes their car and rams them from the driver's side, and ricochets and crashes in a ditch. The driver gets out and runs away. And of course no one drank that night now. This is all she tells me. It's all she feels is relevant to the accident. These stories couldn't possibly be more different, and it's obvious someone is telling me so many lies. I interview the other 3 people in V2 and get a pretty identical story with a couple variances. Notably, when dude gets out his car, he starts walking toward his house, which goes past their vehicle. His baby mama gets out of passenger front seat and says, "Hey, you okay?" or something, and he punches her in the face and keeps walking. The 2 dudes with them were adorably stupid innocent, but I didn't want to hold it against my driver that he just happened to have no one in his car, whereas the other people could put 4 heads together until I saw the cars. So, yeah, the full final truth was that this guy heard his ex-GF was at this club flirting with some dudes when a friend texted him. So he drove to a strip of stores along her path home and waited, getting friends of his at the club to report when they left. He saw them drive past and flew after them in his dad's business van and rammed them twice from the rear at about 60 miles per hour. Then he swung to their driver's side and tried to ram them off the road, but ended up losing control himself and crashing. He got out of the van and started to walk home. As he passed the other vehicle, he punched his ex in the face. I still have no idea who stabbed him, but he went to the hospital that night for stab wounds to his right arm. Detectives who investigated confirmed his house wasn't ransacked, and his version of the story was complete BS. Still, you can never be 100% sure with all the lies flying around. Story 12 obligatory, not an insurance person but friend of the family, was heard this story some 20 years ago, so might also be a fib told to kids. Guy had his car insured for all kinds of things, and there was a pretty intense hailstorm a few years ago. His car was in the garage, but since it was quite old, he thought he could cash in by hammering his car with a rubber hammer. Did so all over, but was too lazy to climb on top to hammer and dent on his car roof. So then he had the brilliant idea to just hammer the roof from the inside. It might be a surprise, but he didn't get any money. Story 13, I handle public liability claims for various agencies and large corporate firms. Had a couple who tried to claim from the park management agency for pain and suffering from mosquito bites. They were having a picnic in the park. This is in Asia, by the way, where mosquitoes are a daily occurrence. Also had someone try to claim for injuries sustained from tripping over an uneven tile outside of a shopping mall. CCTV footage from our client at the mall revealed he had clearly noticed the tile, looked around to see if anyone was watching, then threw himself on the ground. Story 14, I work in auto insurance. In our town, collision with wildlife is fairly common, and the deductible on your insurance is waived as long as the estimator can confirm that wildlife was the cause. This is usually done by just advising the claimant not to wash the vehicle prior to attending their appointment, so that the estimator can view the point of impact for proof hair, blood, etc. Well, one gentleman called in and had already washed his car. When he was advised that if we can't confirm wildlife is the cause, he may have to pay his deductible to have his repairs done, he was having none of it. So he showed up to his estimate with a freaking dead deer in his trunk. I wish I was making this up. Story 15. I work in the stolen vehicle department of my company. Long story short, our policyholder has a caddy and parked it while working on a storefront. He noticed someone stealing his vehicle. So, as the thief is taking off, he jumps on the running boards of his vehicle. Since he was working in construction, he pulled out a Phillips head from his back pocket and proceeded to stab the thief in the face multiple times. The thief crashed, and the man beat the ever-living out of him. Cops didn't do anything to our policyholder, though, which surprised me. Story 16. I work in a car insurance call center, and some of the complaints and issues we have are absolutely hilarious. So just to give some background, we have an excess you pay before we will deal with a claim, which is broken down to a windscreen excess, usually about $65, and a damage excess. Let's say $150 here. So guy calls up, and this is a genuine call. Guy comes through Fing and blinding, saying we messed his policy up and made his price increase when he only claimed on his windscreen, and thinks we have completely messed everything up. Anyway, upon checking the claim, it turns out this guy was under the influence whilst driving, decided to do some crazy GTA, and drove on the pavement, hit someone, and they flew through his windscreen and landed on the passenger seat. You want to know why we put it as a claim and not a windscreen incident as, and I quote, I only claimed on my windscreen, neglecting the complete lack of regard to other people in his mental GTA moment. What a face. Story 17. Well, my time to shine. Throwaway, for obvious reasons. I used to work for a large commercial insurance company that insures a lot of emergency service organizations. Think companies with vehicles that have whirly lights on them. The most redone claim I ever saw there was for a teeny tiny fire department that bought a brand new engine for $750,000. These guys run maybe 150 calls a year, but they were in tight with the town fathers and shook a lot of hands to get grants and donations to purchase this fancy pants truck. It was so big that it wouldn't fit in their truck bays, so they built a pole barn to house it. After the pole barn was built, someone realized that they built it without a heating system. It's important that fire engines aren't left in the cold when not running, for obvious reasons. Instead of spending the money to install a heating system, someone took a portable kerosene heater, cut a shelf into the wall of the pole barn, and stuck the heater on said shelf. The resultant fire reduced their shiny new engine to a charred shell. In terms of smaller claims, we get clusters of cell phone claims. One guy at a station will accidentally drop his cell phone while on an emergency call, and since he's on duty when it happens, we cover the cost of replacing the phone. Within days of him receiving his new phone, half the department will accidentally run over their mobiles while backing up the aerial. Oddly enough, the latest model mobiles seem to be immune to damage. We know exactly what's going on, but without video evidence of some yokel deliberately damaging his phone, we have no choice but to pay the claims. We can usually stop the way by having their agent call and remind them that claims will jack up their premium. Sadly, most of our claims aren't ridiculously funny. They're just straight up tragic, like the paramedic who fell asleep at the wheel because he was working his second 18-hour shift in 2 days and caught 90 minutes of sleep in the previous 24 hours and wound up killing his partner. Watching the tape of that absolutely sucked. Story 18. 5 billion. Yes, that's the right number of zeros. Lawsuit filed by a safety flagger against the general contractor that employed his company because the executive supervisor for the GC, basically the guy in charge of the job site, told him to shut up and do his job after he complained about a couple of knuckleheads riding around in the bucket of an excavator. But if you mean outrageous in terms of events that actually happened that resulted in a loss, that's a different answer. Story 19. Okay, so I worked in claim intake for, among other things, travel insurance. My favorite stories. Mother calls on behalf on her son. Says he flew upstate to visit his father and son with hunting, bagged a big one, and son missed his flight back home to help butcher it. Mother wants to know if this is covered and reimburse her son's ticket. Not even a little bit covered. Grandfather and family will be missing a cruise because grandson is having emergency brain surgery. Assure family not to worry. Everything will be covered. All we need is some documentation from the hospital. Grandfather completely refuses to obtain documentation because the doctors won't want to do that. Attempt to reassure grandfather that doctors are very used to dealing with insurance companies. Grandfather continues to refuse. No idea if he did eventually provide documentation, but I hope he did because his case is the very definition of what our insurance is there for. An ID, like to think we were able to pay him Father calls on behalf of his daughter, another hospitalization case. Pretty standard, almost guaranteed she'll get her money back. Father insists he is the mayor of this town and knows how to push these things along. So the claim should be processed over the next few days instead of the 3-week estimate ID given him. Attempted to explain to Father that harassing an insurance company is generally a bad idea. Father is not having any of it, he's too important. Demands to speak directly to the claims examiner. I shrug and transfer him. Get to hear him being shouted at before I disconnect. Woman calls because while traveling with her double amputee son, she was told that they'd better run to catch their flight. Woman and son did, in fact, catch their flight, so I explained that this is not an insurance matter, no money was lost, and that she should contact the airline to file a complaint. Woman begins to shout at me, first asserting that I, personally, must hate children, then that I probably don't and can't have any children, and finishes by stating that I'm such a cold person, I must be medically barren. Somewhat shocked, I break professionalism and tell the woman, well, am only age. Apparently sharing my viewpoint that I'm a little young to be trying for kids. She is suddenly pleasant and agreeable and asks for the airline's complaint number. Story 20, I handled basically all the heavy-duty rollover claims. Anything from box trucks to 18-wheelers and bigger. If it rolled over, it got put on my lap. I have 2 claims that stick in my mind. One sticks because of what the guy told me went through his mind. The other cause its action flick awesomeness. One 18-wheeler driving down the highway at approximately 65 miles per hour. The highway opens to 2 lanes to go right, 3 stay straight. Our 18-wheeler is traveling in the 3rd lane to go straight. A vehicle in front, a tiny and ancient Ford Taurus, comes to a dead stop in front of the 18-wheeler. Apparently he missed his turn and decided to stop, reverse, and go right. Well, the 18-wheeler had about 5 seconds, and he said to me, I can't be responsible for killing someone. I know he did something stupid, but I would have killed him if I hit him. It was him, or me, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do what I did. He was able to pump the brakes, push off from the Taurus to the left, went down a 30-foot embankment off the highway. Truck caught on fire, but he survived. The Taurus didn't stop, didn't realize he almost died and almost killed someone else and was never to be heard from again. This one short. Tractor trailer loses brakes going down a steep road that levels every 50 yards. There's a tractor trailer going the opposite way. The one without brakes starts going airborne every time it hits a more level surface before a steeper grade, going 60 to 70 miles per hour plus on a side road. Tractor trailer without brakes hits the other tractor trailer about 6 feet in the air, broke a retaining wall, tore a utility pole, took out someone's front steps, spilled cooking oil all into a reservoir, and you could not tell the tractor from the trailer. Not kidding. Best non-movie action I've ever seen. Story 21, not necessarily claims, but still insurance related. I work in commercial insurance, workers' comp, general liability. A little background to understand this story is that each business is assigned class codes, and each class code carries a different rate per $100 of payroll for workers' comp. So an office-only employee might be 20 cents per $100 of payroll, while a long-distance truck driver might be $20 per $100 of payroll. Anyways, I was asking this person what these employees do, and they claimed that all they did was clean up job sites lower rate and did not perform any sort of carpentry work higher rate. So the following conversation took place. Me, why are you paying these union employees hundreds of thousands of dollars when cleanup only happens after the job site? Cheap, well, they're always on the job site, and they clean up when the subcontractors are finished. Me, cleanup only takes place after the work has been completed, though. What are they doing in the meantime? Cheap, they're on coffee break. Me, okay. Last year, according to the owner of the business, they all performed carpentry work. Cheap, the owner was confused. He didn't know what you meant when you asked him. Me, can I speak with him and ask him again? Cheap, no, another one, which I luckily haven't had to deal with the repercussions of yet, is a machinery dealer. Typically, machinery dealers have people who perform outside sales who go to customers to sell products roughly 75 cents per $100. However, if these sales employees do any demonstrations, they are to fall under the machinery dealer class code, roughly $6 per 100. For years, these employees were considered outside sales. Me, do your outside sales employees perform demonstrations? So no best person, well, yeah. $2 million of payroll for outside sales just got switched to machinery dealer, or roughly $120K in additional premium. I am not looking forward to when they get the bill. Worked in auto liability and homeowners liability claims for 3 years. Currently work in subrogation recoveries. So I have a few, and my favorite from my dad who did in the past. I had one where our insured's 40-year-old daughter was living in her home, but wasn't listed on the policy. We told the insured in the past that we want to insure them if the daughter resided in the home due to a mysterious disappearance of a ring. Daughter had drug issues as well. Well, the daughter continued to reside in the home and took the insured's credit card and rented out a hotel room for her and her boyfriend to do heroin. They passed out, leaving candles burning. Candles caught drapes on fire, which activated the sprinklers. Water damage to a total of 8 units due to water going down 4 levels between the walls. $130K in damages. We paid it and canceled the insured. My dad had one where a guy claimed to be. My dad went to the home, and everything fell off about it. First red flag was the windows were broken out not in, so all the glass was on the outside. Next, he was claiming 1,000s in records being stolen. Well, every record started with an S or T. Guy showed Polaroids of his missing TV, yet you could see in the reflection it being taken in a Walmart. My dad was going to deny the guy on site, but saw a loaded handgun on the table. My dad denied on the phone. That guy was later arrested for beheading a prostitute. Story 22 client came into my office and told me her dog ate her old smelly shoes. Is this case covered by any of my insurances? Unfortunately, I had to tell her no. Story 23, not insurance, but a warranty claim. I had someone claim their DVD disc drive was faulty. It didn't hit the eject button properly. Of course, they had tried to pry it open with a knife. When they failed, they tried to lube it up with butter from the kitchen. Then they tried to claim the physical damage to the outside of the drive under warranty. When I declined them, they called back and tried to claim the agent told them to do it. Unlucky for them, they got me twice. Story 24, oh my gosh, my time to shine. I once had a claim where our insureds were attacked by their neighbor's cow. The neighbor actually moved quite a while ago, but forgot one of the cows. Now when a cow is starving dehydrated, I guess they go crazy insane, which is what happened to this one. Our insured was standing outside, getting his mail. When the cow began charging at him, he ran to his door, but the cow beat him to it and ran inside with our insured. Our insured wife then attempted to help get the cow away and was apparently inured in the process. Cow caused damages to the home and injuries. Lesson is, don't forget your cows when you move. Story 25, friend story, but anyway. Received a claim for robbery and had to go and do the assessment. Basically considerable loss, etc., etc. However, the claimant had a terrace property with a pool above the height of the house. They found that the pool was empty, with all the possessions packed neatly in the pool. Lesson, at least remove the goods from the property before claiming. Story 26, I work at a car home insurance company. Once lodged a claim for a guy driving a coupe through the country who came across a few horses. One decided to leap over his car. One of its legs broke clean off and landed on the passenger's seat. There was blood absolutely everywhere. I have plenty more stories, haha. Some much more gruesome. Story 27, my father-in-law has worked in insurance for years. He tells 2 good ones in particular. One, a drunk went out one night, then proceeded to scale a fence into a closed and locked water park. He fell face first over the top of the fence about 10 feet onto the pavement, killing him. His family sued the water park for wrongful death, and the insurance company had to pay about $1 million. IRC2. A babysitter took a little girl to an amusement park. While on a roller coaster, she unbuckled the seatbelt, stood up, and was decapitated. The babysitter sued the amusement park for the trauma of the experience. The insurance company had to pay again, about $1 million. IRC. Story 28. I spent a few years dealing with life insurance and annuities. The best one I personally saw was a guy filed a life insurance claim for his wife. She was killed in a boating accident. Reading through the paperwork and police report, he was driving and accidentally hit her with the boat, and the prop cut her up pretty bad. I passed it on to the correct area and move on with my day. Maybe 5 months later, I could get the claim paperwork for the lady again, but this time it's filed by her sister as the contingent beneficiary. Looking through that paperwork, the husband was found to have murdered her with the boat for the insurance money to run off with some 19-year-old girl had been banging. He was found guilty, and per the life insurance contract, if you're found to have murdered the insured, you don't get the money. I spent a brief period as a claims manager for an auto insurance company. This guy was driving down a residential street, 25 miles per hour limit, and lost control. He jumped the curb, took out a few shrubs, went through a fence, hit one house, and ended up crashed into another. He filed the claim stating something along the lines of, I was carefully driving approximate 20 miles per hour when another car veered at me, and I had to swerve to not get hit naturally. We pulled the police report to get the details from that. His quote to the cop that arrived on scene, I was rushing home because I forgot to shut my garage door and didn't want anyone stealing from me. I just lost control and we went back to the guy and asked him to confirm his version of the story. He stuck to what he told us. We told him about the police report. Obviously, the cops are lying we paid the claim, but didn't renew his policy. He ended up suing the company for canceling his policy. I left before it made it anywhere, but am comfortable assuming he lost. Story 29, an acquaintance is an adjuster in marine insurance. He gets a claim for a total loss on a $9 million yacht. Apparently the boat was too deep to try and salvage. He thought it was odd that only the owner was on board when it sunk and was rescued by CG. So he contracted a company who has a ROV sub to dive down and check the wreck. Well, as it turns out, the boat was completely stripped. Even stuff that couldn't have floated away like TVs and appliances presented the owner with video evidence and rejected the claim. TLDR, if you're going to scuttle your own boat, do it over the Mariana Trench. Story 30 stock analyst here. Covered insurance stocks for many years. I would always ask the CEOs what was their most up claim. The one that sticks out in my mind was a building defect claim. New home built. Shower was supposed to have a fan installed, but wasn't put in. Instead, it had live wires hanging out. Husband and wife are having sexy shower time. She goes down on him, and he reaches up to the ceiling. He touches wires and dies of heart attack. She gets major burns in her mouth. The other one involves a pet sitter playing fetch with dogs at a park with bluffs overlooking beach ocean. Pet sitter tosses ball. All the dogs chase it. One dog gets the ball and looks over the cliff edge. Dog opens mouth and drops the ball over the cliff. One dog jumps after it.